pastor of the house, Pastor Arthur, and today we're gonna do what we call time travel. And time travel means we'll be going into the past. Yes, so we're going to do time travel. Now, what do we mean by trying time travel? Time travel is basically whatever we do that takes us to the past or the present or the future. Now, we are cosmological in our thinking. And what do we mean by cosmological thinking? The past and the present and the future, they all control your life. Time is a very important aspect in life. It is life. You know, we measure life because if we can measure life, and you measure life when you tell somebody, how old are you? Meaning, how much life have you had on this earth? And you say, I'm 35. That means you have 35 years. Years is a unit of time. So what does that mean? Life is timed. Life is timed. And so if life is timed, we are always time traveling every moment of the day. Even now we're time traveling. A few minutes ago I've said something. I can go back to it. When I record, when I play this thing, when I play the post again, I will be time traveling. And I will be playing it in the present and in the future. So I'll be playing a past event in the present and the future. Something that happened before. And this is what happens when you read the Bible, when you read the Quran, when you read the Bhagavad Gita, when you read Buddha's writings, when you read the philosophers of old, Aristotle, and all of these guys, we are always time traveling when we are reading. So for example, when you read the book of Exodus, you know how I read the book of Exodus these days? I say, let me open the book. Let me open 1800 BC to 1445 BC. And I open it. Because the stories in Exodus happened between 1800 BC and 1445 BC. And the stories in Leviticus happened between 1445 and 1446 BC. So that is roughly 20 years. The stories in Leviticus took place 20 years within the time Israel was around. And then, for example, so when I want to open the book of Psalms or Proverbs, I am actually getting into the time 950 BC. So I've entered, when I open the book of Proverbs, I'm entering 1950 BC. When I want to discuss, like the book we talked about recently, the prophet Daniel, the queer prophet, I enter into 605 BC. So whenever I read the book of Daniel, I'm in 605 BC. I put myself in the 605 BC. And when I read the New Testament, and I read the letters of Paul, like the Romans, the letter to the Romans, I am putting myself in AD 57. And so I put myself in that time zone. I study what was happening in that time zone. And I put myself there. So what am I trying to say? Whenever you read these things, understand what time it was that time. Because sometimes the mistake people make when they time travel, they think what they're reading happened yesterday. They think the story of Abraham sacrificing his son Isaac happened yesterday. You see? And what we're supposed to do, we're supposed to pick principles from history. We are not supposed to repeat history. Especially bad history is not supposed to be repeated. That's what we are saying. History of killings. You know, in the Bible there were genocides. Are we going to repeat genocides because God said they were okay? Because in the Old Testament, God commanded the king, go and kill this whole nation of the Amalekites. Kill them all. Men, women, and children. So are we going to repeat genocide because God did it? That God allowed people to be killed? That's the problem we have with when we read books that were written long time ago. And then we want them to be implemented today. That's the danger. That's why I don't just read the Bible these days. I don't read it. I've read it all, which is very important to do. But I don't stick to it and say that I want this to be repeated again. No, especially the bad things that, what I mean by bad things, things that violate human rights of people, like right to life and right to love. You know, you're supposed to love whomever you want to love. And no one should tell you you can't love somebody because it says so. Why are you relying on a law that was written in 1800 BC? 1500 BC. Why are you trying to implement a very old law that has been superseded by science? It doesn't make sense. So, that's what we are trying to say. Whenever you're reading any book, please understand, I'm talking about any book. You are actually time traveling. You are traveling into time. And there are some books that are about the past, and some books that are about the present, and some books that are about the future. Like, which are the books that deal with the past? The Bible, history books, the Quran. Now, which are the books that deal with the present? These include newspapers. These include internet articles. These include the media. When you watch the news, you're getting information. Because you've got to understand, there is a diversity of communication. Books are mediums of communication. Podcasts are mediums of communication. Video broadcasts, that's the television, are mediums of communication. All of these things are diverse ways of communicating. And some of them communicate to us the past, others communicate to us the present, and others communicate to us the future. Now, the religious books, some of them, not all of them, they try to communicate also the future. This is what you call prophecies. And they go ahead of time to prophesy what happened and what's going to happen. As you've seen, like the Bible still predicts that there will be an end of the world. It has decided to plan for you what's going to happen. So if you are in a Christian worldview, your future is already planned. There's a future you have, a spiritual future. And that spiritual future is that Jesus Christ is coming back again to rule in the world. But not everybody holds that view. And they're still Christian. Why? Because it's not the data that is important. It is the interpretation of the data. So we are also going to talk about that's why we're going to talk about different faiths, different denominations, different sects, to show you that human beings have different understanding of data. And therefore they form different interpretations. All the sects you see in the world, all the denominations in the world, they are just diverse interpretations of the same data. The Catholic Church is is an expression of a different interpretation of whom God is. It's not the same as the Anglican Church. It's not the same as the Methodist Church. Why? They have different interpretations. They interpret the data differently. Which data? They interpret the data of Jesus Christ differently. Like, for example, the Catholic Church does not believe, they believe in transubstantiation, which means that when the priest holds the bread, the body of Christ, it turns into the very body of Christ. Now, there are churches we don't follow that concept. So what do? They form their other denominations to have what they believe in. So all we have is different sects which are just different interpretations of the same data. That's all. The same data. The story of Jesus Christ telling his disciples that please keep the Last Supper. Do this in remembrance of me. Now, he didn't explain the theology behind it. So human beings create and they interpret it differently. So some say, oh, we can do this figuratively, and the bread just represents Jesus. But others say, no, when Jesus said, this is my flesh, he really meant it. It is my flesh. So, hence the doctrine of transubstantiation. So that is what happens, and we are always time traveling. Everything, the traditions we do, they are all based on time. And when you have a new things always face challenges because they are not new. So they have to stand the test of time. They have to stand the test of time. And so that's what happens to very many new sects and very many new parties and very many new ideas and very many new organizations and very many new companies. Even in business, you know, a business can last for 2 years and it collapses. You see, because of how it was made, or there are very many circumstances that lead to businesses ending very soon. It's just like human beings. We get born. Some people die when they're very young. Others die when they are middle-aged. Others die when they're very old. And we are getting to a place whereby man wants to live forever. You see? So these are the things we've got to know. Every time you're getting information, you are time traveling. You've got to understand that. And this section is going to be dealing with time travel. When we read from the Bible, just know we're going back to the past. Just know we're going to like I told you, when you read the book of Ruth, you're going to 1140 BC. When you read the book of Jonah, you're going back to 760 BC. So you got to put yourself in that mold. And then sometimes when you read the book of Isaiah or John the Revelator, he talks about the future. And he talks about, have you noticed John, the book of Revelation, that is a futuristic book? It talks about things that look like what is happening to the world. Climate change. That's why the end time movement is one of the fastest growing movements in religion, because the world is, climatic changes are happening. But guess what? We as human beings can take responsibility and stop climate change from happening by responsible actions. I was listening to somebody talk, and he was mentioning how places like Finland, they have 80% forest cover. Do you know those guys are not going to have any problem with water? They are done. They are set. And if we had very many Finnish governments doing what they're doing, believe you me, climate change is gone. But we also need to understand that much as we can do, we can only do what is within our reach in Earth, because we don't just live in a planet called Earth. We live in a cosmos that involves the sun and involves the moon and involves the stars, asteroids. They can decide to fly anytime. We are in a very big world, massive universe. And sometimes if the sun decides to die today, as they have said, the sun has a lifespan, it will be the end of our planet as we know it. So we see that is why we are working hard to save the planet the best way we know how, but we are giving room, knowing full well you can't stop the sun from dying. Just as you can't stop the moon from moving. I mean, you can't stop the moon from being the moon. And the sun, if it decides to die, it will die. And there's nothing we can do about it. The only good thing we can do is do our part of climate change to make the world a better place. And that's what I've said. Rather than have the... You see, the problem of the end-time movement, people are a bit fatalistic and they are waiting for the end. So they don't get to do anything. They're always waiting for the rapture. When he's coming? He's coming anytime, and I don't want him to find me. No. Cool down, brother. Cool down, my sister. This world is your home. Build it and make it a better place for everybody. So, as we continue time traveling, please enjoy yourself. And when you read the past, also read the future. I read Michio Kaku, the famous physicist, and I want to know what he is seeing is going to happen in the future. Ray Kurzweil, very great man, a futurist, and I'm spending time studying the futurists so that I can understand the world and know that the technological singularity is coming. So people of God, let's rise, let's get to know, let's time travel. Whenever you read the Bible, remember you're time traveling. You read the Quran, you're time traveling. Any book, anything you do, any data you're getting, you are time traveling. So if you feed yourself with futurism, you will be, in my view, you will be more anticipatory and more hopeful for life, and not negative futurism. There is a negative futurism. Of course, we'll talk about this. There's a dystopia and the utopia. You know, the book of the Revelation is a dystopic book. It's a book that says there will be a dystopia before the utopia comes. And the dystopia is the Antichrist dystopia, and the utopia is Christ's utopia. So, the problem is, some people believe the dystopia is now. In the days of Paul, they truly believed they were living in dystopia. But when the church gained power through Constantine, it was utopia. The popes lived in lavish glory. They enjoyed themselves. They were peaceful. They were wealthy. But the early Christian church, the time of Paul, you can see Paul was a sufferer. Could any pope go through what Paul went through? Going to jail? Being flogged? You see? So Paul was able to say he was living in dystopia. But the popes, who were now reading Paul's letters, knew they were living in utopia. And they said Christ has already come. And he has come spiritually. And we are reigning now in earth. Why? Because the circumstances changed. When the circumstances change, the interpretation of life changes. When you are a poor man and now all of a sudden you become rich, how you view life changes. Your point of view of life changes dramatically. And when you're a rich guy and you become poor, your point of view of life changes. because of circumstances. And what are circumstances? They're events in the moment of time. Time is king. And that's why Jesus Christ is the same yesterday, today, and forever. Yes, meaning he's the same in the past, he's the same in the present, and he's the same in the future. World without end. Time is the world. And we're going to do these studies of time traveling and Hebrew languages and Greek in this place.
Yeah,